Welcome to The Big Why, a series from Montana Public Radio driven by your curiosity about Montana. This is a show about listener-powered reporting. We'll answer questions, large or small, about anything under the big sky. By Montanans, for Montana, this is The Big Why. This is our inaugural episode, and we're answering a question that has to do with this show's name. Here's Katie Wade, MTPR's Community Engagement Specialist, with our first question.
Hey, Freddie. I'm really excited about this project we're starting and excited to see what we'll discover together. We want to get listeners involved in our work, and we'll answer their questions in the future, but for this episode, I've got my own question. Why is Montana known as the Big Sky State?
Before we sat down for this episode, you mentioned you were going to ask that question, Katie. And I wanted to hear if people in downtown Missoula knew the answer. Here's their responses.
I always thought it was just because, when you're driving through, the flatter parts, eastern Montana, the horizon is so low. The sky looks so big. That's just what I always thought.
Does it have clearer skies? Sunnier? I don't know. I don't know. I've never thought about it.
Honestly, the sky does feel bigger here with all the mountains and stuff in the background, so.
Because of the endless wide open spaces, I believe.
I was told a joke, they could see your dog run off into the field for 7 days if you let it. So.
I have no idea.
Perfect.
Are you going to tell me the answer?
I can tell you.
Yeah, I want to know the answer.
And we're going to do that now. All of those were great answers, but the story of how Montana became known as a Big Sky State starts with an advertising campaign by the Transportation Department in the 1930s. John Axeline, a Transportation Department historian, says around that time the state had built thousands of miles of highways and bridges.
And the whole idea was, well, now that we've got these, we need to get people to come here. We need to advertise what we've got.
To do that, the department wanted to figure out a new, catchy nickname that could bring people here. There were a few floating around at the time, like Treasure State, Land of Shining Mountains, and Stub Toe State.
I wish that one stuck.
For decades, all of those slogans appeared on promotional material for the state. Then, in 1947, a guy named A.B. Guthrie Jr. publishes a book. Guess what it's called?
Let me guess. Is it something about the big sky?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's called The Big Sky. We're going to shift away from the ad campaign for just a minute to talk about this book. I spoke with former University of Montana professor Bill Beavis about Guthrie Jr. and the book. He says Guthrie Jr. owned a cabin on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains and lived the gruff lifestyle that the book portrays.
And he had a gravelly voice. Well, I didn't want to write a romance novel like those damn things they're putting out now,
Yeah, Beavis says Guthrie was the first who set out to write a realistic novel about Montana and Western life.
Bud was determined not to do a romantic escape novel of going wild in the wonderful West. He meant it to have an ugly underbelly, and he achieved that.
Wow, I really didn't know any of this.
So the book was a big deal at the time because Beavis says it was a good attempt to introduce realism into the Montana frontier narrative. He says Guthrie Jr. set out and accomplished writing an epic novel for the time.
So it's got all these epic qualities of being the right title in the right place at the right time for a state that was ready to really celebrate its frontier history.
So anyway, the state's trying to get more people here in the 30s. This book comes out in the late 40s. Now let's fast forward to 1961, when the Land of Shining Mountains, not as catchy, right? The state's still looking for a better way to attract more people to come to Montana. So then decades after they've started this journey of figuring out how to brand Montana, transportation historian John Axeline says the state picks the Big Sky, the title of A.B. Guthrie Jr.'s book.
Well, how did that end up happening?
Yeah, we don't know a whole lot about why the transportation department picked it, but that didn't stop Axeline from theorizing. He says a Land of Shining Mountains makes sense for western Montana, not so much for 2/3 of the state that are Great Plains.
Big Sky is really a lot more all-inclusive than Land of Shining Mountains. I mean, the whole idea is to have people visit the whole state, not just one part of it.
The Transportation Department produced a video in 1971 called Montana, Land of the Big Sky. It shows helicopter views of the peaks in Glacier National Park, bubbling hydrothermal features in Yellowstone, and water skiers on Flathead Lake.
The Big Sky country is blessed with an array of recreational areas that just won't quit. But I don't believe you'll find a place with more scenery, excitement, and downright Western hospitality than the region.
So, isn't that kind of ironic? I mean, that book was all about not romanticizing the state, that gritty underbelly stuff, right?
Exactly. That's a really good point. Big Sky has become kind of synonymous with beauty, wide open landscapes, this idyllic Montana thing that makes for stunning photos and tourism campaigns. The Big Sky Resort, for example, launched its first promotion ski video in the early 70s under the theme Ski the Sky.
Climb aboard and leave the crowds behind. We're going to catch a breeze and float clear over to the far side of a frontier, where everything is big and wide and free, where the nearest living thing is a tall...
So the state's model morphed from something that reflected grit and realism to words on a billboard. But the name stuck. Here's UM Professor Bill Beavis again.
In the Big Sky, he's got the soliloquy on romantic old Montana. Well, she's all gone now. That's what the trapper says, because the people are coming in to settle the land and farm. Well, she's all gone now, gone by God, the whole shittery, and not to care, saving some of us who seen her new.
Beavis says there's a nostalgia of Lost Paradise in the book, which seems to play out over and over again in Montana history, and even right now. As the state changes and more people visit or move to Montana, the Big Sky name works as a salesman, promising something great or beautiful is about to happen. But you have to get here first. There you have it, Katie. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, Freddie, consider me learned.
Thanks to Olivia Holmes, Ava Sweet, Casey O'Brien, Sean Patterson, Fabian Martinez, and Jennifer Krause. Shaylee Rager contributed reporting to this episode. Now we want to know what makes you curious about Montana. Send us your questions at bigY.org. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.